So let's compare the big six Canadian banks to know which stock to buy. We see that the TD Bank has the highest net interest income. The highest net interest margin is of Scotia Bank. So in this metric, BNS and TD both are clear winners. The lowest efficiency ratio is of. So here in terms of ROA and ROE for the year of 2022 is clear winner. Don't worry if you don't know anything about it, because I will explain everything in the simplest way possible along with how banks do their business. So the first metric is net interest income and net interest margin. So when you deposit your money in bank's checking or savings account, bank lends that money to borrowers at higher interest rates compared to what they pay you in your checking or savings account. So that difference between the interest earned from the borrowers and the interest paid out to you is called the net interest income. So of course, the higher the difference between those two, the better it is for the bank. And the net interest margin is net interest income divided by the average interest earning assets. Again, higher is better. So if we see the net interest income data of 2022 for all the six banks, we see that the TD Bank has the highest net interest income of around $27,353 million. Right after TD, RBC and Scotia also has a good net interest income. Whereas the lowest net interest income was of National Bank, around $5,251 million, which is quite obvious considering National Bank mainly focuses on the Quebec province and it is not widely accepted in whole Canada. Now let's check the data for net interest margin of 2022 for six Canadian banks, and the net interest margin is net interest income divided by the average interest earning assets. So as we can see, the highest net interest margin is of Scotia Bank, around 2.2%, and the lowest net interest margin is of CIBC Bank, around 1.4%. So for Scotia Bank, the net interest margin is also good and the net interest income is also good, around $18,115 million. And the second highest net interest margin is of National Bank, which is around 1.96. As we discussed, the net interest income of National Bank is low. However, the net interest margin is quite impressive. Surprisingly, RBC also don't have good net interest margin. It is around 1.48%. However, their net interest income is still in good position, so they can improve their net interest margin in future. So here we can say that the BNS is making more profit with the same capital investment than its peers, whereas TD is good at generating higher interest income. So in this metric, BNS and TD both are clear winners. So we all know that the interest income is the primary way that most commercial banks make their money. So net interest margin is very important metric. To increase the interest income, banks try to increase their deposits in checking and low interest savings account, which gives them the capital to generate more interest income. That's why you will see that lots of banks give $300 to $400 for opening an account, or free iPads and AirPods and whatnot. So there is one important metric which shows how much deposits a bank has compared to the loans given out by that bank, which is known as the loan to deposit ratio and is derived by total loans divided by the total deposits. So if the total loans given out is lower compared to the total deposits, then we can say that the bank has a good access of low cost capital with which they can give more loans to borrowers and can increase their income. However, if the amount of loan given out is too low, meaning the ratio of loan to deposit is too low, it indicates that bank is not meeting its earning potential by giving more loans to borrowers. And this ratio should not be too high either, as bank will not have the funds for the uncertain situations in the future, as they have given out all the deposits in terms of loans. So the ideal loan to deposit ratio is between 70 to 90%. Sometimes it could be higher as well. Here is the data for all the 6 Canadian banks at the end of 2022. So the highest loan to deposit ratio is of Scotia Bank, around 80%, meaning they have lended 80% of their deposits as a loan to borrowers. And the lowest loan to deposit ratio is of TD Bank and is around 64%. So the loan to deposit ratio can be interpreted in two ways. For example, high loan to deposit ratio of Scotia Bank shows that how effectively it's using the deposits to generate the income, and the low ratio of TD Bank shows it has a good access of low cost capital to lend the loans and grow their earnings in future. In a nutshell, all the banks are in good shape considering its loan to deposit ratio. I personally see that the TD and RBC Bank is in good shape to use that low cost capital to increase their earnings in future. So after discussing the net interest income side of banks, now let's focus on the non-interest income and non-interest expense side of the bank. And that non-interest side will give us the efficiency ratio of the bank, which is our third metric. So the non-interest income for bank includes credit card fees, service charges on deposits account, investment banking fees, payment processing fees, and the non-interest expenses for bank include salaries, rents of the space, technology cost, marketing cost, and many more. So the efficiency ratio is calculated as bank's non-interest expenses divided by the total revenue. Think of this efficiency ratio as how much the bank spends to generate its revenue. For example, if efficiency ratio is 50%, then bank is spending 50 cents to generate $1 revenue. So the lower efficiency ratio is better for the bank. So if we see the efficiency ratios for big 6 Canadian banks for 2022, it is in the range of 50 to 60%. The lowest efficiency ratio is of RBC Bank and is around 52.3%, whereas CIBC has the highest of 56.4%. So from this ratio, we can say that RBC is most efficient running their operations and CIBC is not that very good compared to its peers. However, it's still not that bad. Efficiency ratio below 60% is considered good and below 50% it is excellent. So if an efficiency ratio starts to go up, then there are two things. Either bank's expenses are increasing in comparison to its revenue, or its revenues are decreasing in comparison to its expenses. Here, based on the efficiency ratio, RBC is clear winner. Now let's talk about the important metrics ROE, return on equity, and ROA, return on assets. So ROE indicates how well the company is managing the money invested by its shareholders like us to generate the profits. And ROA indicates how effectively a company is using its resources and assets to make a profit. So if you are mainly concerned with how much return you can get in certain period, then you can refer to ROE. And if you also want to know how effectively company is using its resources, then you can refer to the ROE. Ideally, you should refer to both of the metrics. However, banks mainly focuses on ROE, which is return on equity. So let's see the ROA for all 6 Canadian banks at the end of 2022. So as we can see, the highest ROA is of 1.27% of BMO and the lowest ROA is 0.7% of CIBC Bank. For all other banks, it's decent in the range of 0.8 to 1%. TD also has a good ROA of 0.93%. Now, if we talk about the ROE, then again BMO is top with 22.9%, which is quite amazing, and the lowest ROE is of again CIBC with 14%. If BMO will be able to maintain high ROE in near future, as a shareholders you can expect high returns compared to the competitors. So here in terms of ROA and ROE for the year of 2022, BMO is clear winner. Here I should also mention the good 18.8% ROE of National Bank and 18% ROE of TD Bank, which is quite good as well. So in the next video, we will talk about the PE ratio, PB ratio, dividend payout ratio, allowance and level of bad loans. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you like my content, please do like, share and subscribe the channel. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section. This video is just for an educational purposes and please do not consider it as any recommendation.